What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And yesterday we had a wildcard draft. Today it's free hit time. I think in game week 30 plus, a lot of people use bench boost. In game week 31 plus, a lot of people that I'm seeing that have got chips left, it's either wildcard or it's a free hit this week. And I think this week will be the last week where we see a lot of chips being played before the end of the season. Yes, other weeks will have chips being played too, but not as many as this week. So let's just jump into it and I'll show you the draft that I've pulled together. So this is a free hit draft that I've put together just to go through a couple of admin things. So one of the comments on the wildcard draft yesterday was that not everybody can make the draft that I put together because maybe they don't have the same players that they already own, that they've built up value in. Maybe their squad value isn't as high as mine is, etc, etc. I guess the reason I do these draft videos is not necessarily to say, here's a draft, you should copy it. You know, I don't know absolutely everything. It's just my opinion. And it might give you some ideas of players to pick. Like, I've put Wan-Bissaka in this one, but it could just be Maguire. You could just not have a Man United defender at all. But this is my free hit draft if I had this chip this week. And obviously, I can't do a team that meets every single person's squad value because they're all different. There's no point doing it with a 100 million team either, like if I started a fresh account, because that's not realistic either because a lot of people have got more than 100 million to spend. And obviously a fresh team has absolutely no player value kind of tied up because they're having to pay full price for everything. So that's not realistic either. So this is the best way to do it, I think, with my team. The 4 blank players are basically what I usually do when I build these teams. I start off by putting the cheapest possible players in those positions. So if I want to play 3-4-3, it's 1 midfielder, 2 defenders, 1 goalie. You know, if it's 3-5-2, it would be 1 forward instead. So 3-4-3, which is what this is, 3.9 million goalie, 2 3.9 million defenders, and 1 4.2 million midfielder. Now, I'm not saying you should go with your final team with those price positions because most of those players will not play. In fact, they will all not play. You might get Guendouzi at Arsenal, for example, at 4.2, but you're not really expecting too many points from him. So I do that to see how much money I can put into my first team, and then I see if there's any players that I want to take out to kind of increase my bench kind of value. Now, most weeks you're not going to have to rely on the bench, but I just think at the time, because it's game week 31, there's going to be a few games that have been played, we might see a little bit more of a kind of rest and rotation. It's very hard to tell at the moment. Obviously, we aren't really anywhere near getting through game week 30 plus yet at the time of making this video either. So a lot could change, but hopefully this will give you some ideas. So the first thing I've done is looked at the fixtures for this week. So I've got them actually next to me. You can't see them, but I've got them on my screen as well, just so I can make notes to the team that I've picked. So Leicester versus Brighton stands out as a very good fixture on paper. Again, we'll have to see how teams perform this week, what injuries happen and all that kind of stuff. Spurs versus West Ham, very good. Man United versus Sheffield United. So on paper, at least from maybe from a defensive point of view, that's pretty decent because I don't think Sheffield United are going to trouble them too much. From an attacking point of view, though, Sheffield United has not been a team that I've wanted to target. But Dean Henderson can't play for Sheffield United against Man United, and he was very good against Aston Villa. Without him, obviously, they would have had a different goalkeeper, and he could have maybe made the saves instead. But Dean Henderson was very good against Aston Villa and really just kept them in the game. So without him, that could hurt. Man United have already put 3 past Sheffield United once this season. This one's at home as well, which could help at Old Trafford. So I don't think that's necessarily a hugely bad fixture to target players for. Newcastle versus Villa. Villa were quite good against Sheffield United from an attacking point of view. I think Dubravka could be good though for saves, a bit like Dean Henderson. That's an okay fixture to target. Wolves versus Bournemouth, very good. Chelsea versus Man City is a tough one because in years gone past, you wouldn't want players playing against Chelsea, but Chelsea are not that same defensive team they once were. So I actually think it'd be okay to have Man City players in there. The only problem is, as always, it's a risk of rotation. Will Chelsea do anything to nullify them? Potentially. And if they do, you don't want all that money wrapped up in Man City players. You're not convinced 100% are going to start. You know, like Sterling and Mahrez is very fit. They could play a few games in a row. But realistically, De Bruyne is probably the one I want from that match. Southampton versus Arsenal, I just think that would put me off that Arsenal match against Man City. I think Aubameyang looked okay at times. I put out a tweet about him today that he did try and make a good few runs. They just weren't picked up on. Not sure I'd be targeting Arsenal. And the obvious one is Liverpool against Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace, again, are not really a team that I would want to attack because they usually do quite well defensively. They usually keep quite a few clean sheets every season. They don't usually get battered by a team either, kind of 4-5-0, whatever it might be. They usually keep the goal count quite low. My only worry about, if you've noticed in this draft, about not having a Liverpool player at all is this is probably going to be the title-winning game. They can't do it against Everton, but if they beat Everton, then this will be a title-winning game against Crystal Palace. So how will they react to that? Well, they go a couple of goals up and then just keep going for it, will they be nervous? And maybe that will affect them going forward. It's tricky. I don't think my captain would come from the Liverpool versus Crystal Palace game. And maybe that is going to be famous last words. I mean, there are ways around it. I've got Kane up front. I could get rid of him, reduce another one of the midfielders down a little bit and get Salah or Mane and captain them. So if you wanted to do that, that's an option as well. You could get rid of Vardy and do the same thing. Maybe get rid of Vardy and Son, get a Liverpool midfielder in and a cheaper forward potentially. So someone like maybe Pukki at Norwich playing Everton. So there's ways around it if you want to go for a Liverpool attacker. But I'm going to try and be a bit different for captain, I think, this week. And I'm either going to go for a Man United player against Sheffield United, or I'm going to go for Son or Vardy if I had him. Vardy against Brighton or Son versus West Ham. So I think West Ham's such a good fixture. So that's kind of why I've targeted them here. I've got double Spurs attack, Kane and Son. I think Son has been so good this season again. Really good under Mourinho. Kane has finally had that break. So if I was free hitting, I would want to take a chance on him because he is a bit of a 90-minute man. I'm not saying he will be given, the long break and the 5 subs and stuff, but he's probably going to play the first 2 games, get 60 to 70 minutes, I would say. I know he's just come back from injury, but we know what he's like when it comes back to play, and he always just comes back and starts the next game. And given that he's actually been forced to have a longer break to recover this time, can only be a good thing for him. So I think I would target Spurs players against West Ham. And then Leicester versus Brighton is also a really good game. You could maybe fit a defender in there. I think Wolves versus Bournemouth is decent too. So Jimenez has to be up front, I think, for me. Saiss is in there. If I had the money, I would probably go for Doherty. It's pretty close. Like, you can make some swaps here. Like, I've gone for double Liverpool defence, but I've done it with Alisson because he's a bit cheaper than Van Dijk and a bit cheaper than Robertson as well. And I do think, although I wouldn't necessarily captain an attacker against Crystal Palace, defensive options against them very good because I expect a clean sheet for Liverpool there. So 2 Liverpool defenders. And I've gone for Wan-Bissaka because, again, I don't think Sheffield United are going to cause Man United too many problems. You could go for Maguire, perhaps a little bit more nailed on. Got Fernandes taking corners now. Perhaps he could get a header from a corner or a free kick. Wan-Bissaka, has he improved his attacking creativity enough to warrant a place? I don't know, but they could be one of your 2 picks. And then I've gone for Martial, but again, without seeing the Man United game, it's really hard to pick who to go for. I feel like although Man United could score against Sheffield United, I feel like it's going to be like a poacher's goal from a Martial, some quick feet in the box. Rashford could be good too, but Martial is the one I've gone for. Of course, Fernandes looks like a great option already. A little bit more expensive though, so if you're struggling for cash, maybe Martial is the one to go for, playing as a midfielder in FPL, but playing up front in the actual real-life football, which is good. And then Barnes is kind of my cheap midfielder because I don't have a lot of other money because I've got quite a few big hitters there. De Bruyne, Son, Vardy and Kane, even Martial potentially, and Trent as well. So Barnes is in there too, 6.2 million. He also plays Brighton. Like, his underlying stats were so good before the season ended, getting plenty of really good quality chances, creating chances as well, and much better value he was than Maddison. Now, that's not to say that Maddison won't come back and be a better option now, but for the money saved, there's no reason why I would go for Maddison over Barnes as it stands. There are other cheap options you could go for. Grealish against Newcastle if you think Aston Villa could get something. Sarr for Watford is playing Burnley, so I'm not sure I'll go there. Burnley, to be fair, if you wanted a cheap goalkeeper, Watford might not be the worst option with Ben Foster this week because Burnley without a lot of their attackers. Now, whether they'll be back for Game Week 31, you'll have to wait and see. But if they're not, that could be a good game to target as well. And I think Sarr against Burnley could be decent too if you wanted someone different to Barnes. Otherwise, I don't think there's anyone else I would really go for. Like, I've tried to look at the rest of the team, see if there's any other options. Like Sheffield United defence, I just think you've got to give some Man United some credit and hope that they are going to score. Southampton versus Arsenal. Look, I've got Ings in my main team, and I might actually play him against Arsenal because they were so bad defensively against Man City. But I'm not sure I'd put them in a free hit team. Chelsea I would definitely ignore because they're playing Man City. That's probably the 2 things I think that are maybe missing from this team is another Man City player, if you can fit them in, and a Liverpool attacker. I just think on free hit, I'd probably try and do something a little bit different and go for maybe the double Spurs, the double Leicester attack, and still have the Man United and Man City player. It could hurt because I do expect Liverpool captain ownership to be quite high this week. If you are someone that wants to do something a little bit different, I do think captaincy and your free hit team could be the way to do it this week. This is something that I would do. Like, obviously, the closer it gets to deadline, it might change a little bit. And I've already mentioned about the Liverpool players that I could change. But I think this is a pretty solid squad. I wouldn't usually have a premium goalkeeper in there, but it's the cheapest way in to get another Liverpool defender. You could go for Gomez. He will probably play as well. I just think Alisson in goal and have Wan-Bissaka out on the field with Saiss. Doherty, if you've got the money for it, is probably a way to go. So I think that's quite a good team. Let me know what you think. I'm sure you might have some different opinions. So that is it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure to give it a like. It really does help. Support has been huge since the Premier League has been back. More importantly, FPL has been back. If you're new around here, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when all my other videos are going live and when I'm live streaming, which should be Sunday at 9 o'clock. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, links are below. There's also a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel even further. There'll be a brand new mini league to compete with in July as well, so make sure you check that out. Otherwise, I'll catch you again soon for another video. Cheers all.